down there, and anyone who's interested, there's a lilo bed you can lie on and get under there and in great comfort and look up at it. There's a water wall here with probably about inch tubes running around there. Then there's the firebox in the middle, and the motor down there has got a blower, and the blower sucks the air up through the 90-degree bend there, and then it goes through past the two spark plugs there and into the combustion chamber, which is a big stainless steel box in there. It comes out of the bottom of the box, and the superheater's there. That's a great big heavy thing, probably inch thick tubes. And then from the it goes from the water comes to the bottom of the pancakes, then it goes through the water wall, then it comes back, goes through the superheater, comes out here. Now, also going across the superheater is a long tube with a quartz rod in it. There are a number of quartz rods in it, and we'll get to that on the other side in the control box. But the differential expansion of the split mild steel with the quartz rods reads out the temperature, and that adjusts the normally open and normally closed contacts in the control box. It makes everything work. So, out of the boiler here comes the superheated steam. Mr. Doble had these connectors. I don't think they were anything new, but they've all been nicely made in stainless. That's a little filter to stop any scale getting through. This is now basically a scale trap or a water trap. The steam comes in tangentially, comes down there, and then it goes up the centre tube, and that's the takeoff for the temperature. And then it goes down here and comes out, and then goes to the hand throttle there. And the hand throttle is the steering wheel in the middle, which you can say to kids is for going around little corners. And you can see as you turn that, the spindle for the hand throttle goes up and down there. So you can see the welded aluminium casting, but the spindle's all new. Now, so it comes out of the hand throttle, and then in series with that is the foot throttle. And now the foot throttle, that's all new. Phil's done all that. So completely new spindle, casing, seats, and all the rest of it. That's original. And then it goes out there and down to the engine. We haven't lagged that yet. That's going to be amazing. But what have we got next? Oh yeah, now the fireworks. We've got two coils. When we had the car, we had a Model T Ford spark trembler coil on it. Someone at Holmes at Court's garage had put an electronic ignition spark on it, but Milton went back to coils and also to the points sitting on the back of the blower motor, which is what Doble had in the beginning. And I always wanted like a magneto system on an aeroplane, switches left, switches right, and then switches to both.
Yeah.
And my electronics friend said, just have two switches. You just turn one off, turn one on, turn the other. No, I said, I don't want to have the risk of someone turning it off and having no ignition. So after an awful lot of looking around, didn't cost that much, but it's an ex-military switch I've got in there for about $50 that came from America. It's a centre biased two-way on switch. So you push it to the left, it tests the left coil, push it to the right, tests the right coil. And I've also put in two little LEDs. So you see the LED on for the one you're testing. So Milton was reluctant to put anything on because he said the consequences of getting it wrong could be rather nasty if you have something off and the fuel goes in. But the first thing we found was that one of them wasn't working. So we cleaned the plugs and all the rest of it that happened. And so every time we start it off now, I just check to see that they both work. It's really easy to do. You've got the fan on, you hold the left or right that you want to test, and then you just go off on with the fuel solenoid, and if you get a whoop, you're happy. If you don't, stop. So that's the ignition part. One of the leads, that's the reason it wasn't working. One of the leads was crook, and I thought I'd have to make one, but I went up to somewhere at Hornsby and they had the exact thing for $5, so it made it.
Okay.
Did you do that?
Okay.
The throttle steering box.
Anything back from the
Rewelding
we've been videoed.
Oh, you got a plate.
He took one look.
So that's how you light the fire. Now how the thing's controlled
He welded it. I
is
can't change it.
basically
I don't think it's coming.
there's an auxiliary
very old,
unit
strange.
on the other side.
Yes.
There's the blower motor.
He opens and closes by
The
about
fan's in there.
just enough.
Milton's
And in one
dual
spot,
point
it'll do it without bending the
breaker
shaft.
points are there.
Bend the shaft.
That's the oil pump.
Imagine you
Previously, originally, it had a carburettor system, but Milton put a carburettor system back onto it, but it was downright dangerous having raw fuel right next to all that heat, and for various other reasons we had a couple of fires, and so we put the pump back on again. That pump was on the car when I got it, and someone probably put it on in the 1950s. So it's just a simple pump off a central heating furnace. Runs at 80 pounds, delivers about 6 gallons an hour. So that's all that part. Now over here is the auxiliary unit, and that's the thing about the size of a small car engine. And it's driven by a rod that's coming up under here, and there's a universal joint, and it comes in here and runs the generator. But it also runs 4 pumps, and the 4 pumps go out onto there. So that's the stuffing box for the pumps. You take that plate off and then you can adjust the land nuts for the pumps. And there's 4 of them going out that way, and they're rather clever. They're solenoid actuated, which means that there's a spring that holds the inlet valve member off its seat. So at the moment, nothing's happening. There's no current on them, but the pumps won't work. You can turn the auxiliary unit and the ram pumps will just go in and out, but they won't pump because the inlet valve's inoperative. So as soon as the control box over here that we're going to get to soon says I want water, it says it sends current to 2 of the solenoids, retracts the spindles, lets the inlet valves work and the pumps work. So very clever. Now, when you want to steam up, and you might have a dry boiler, you pull up this thing here, which we can actually probably do. And what that does, look. What's happened there is, because the battery's connected, it's engaged the switch here, there's a dog clutch there, and now it's pumping the, well, it thinks it's pumping water into the boiler, but it's not, because the ignition's turned off. So the pumps are doing their little thing, but they can't pump because the little valves are off. Now, if we trick it and make it think that it's going to work, there we go. Now, 2 pumps are on now. You can actually, if you're down there and your ears work, you can hear the little click of them coming off. But now, it's not getting anywhere, so we turn that off. Right. So that's how you fill the boiler if you're cold, but in most cases it siphoned itself full and it cooled down. And here's the water tank, of course. There's the water tank gauge, and the water at the moment comes out through a little filter there, and then goes into the pumps. So now we should work our way around to the control box. That thing there is called the compensator. It's a pressure balance bypass valve, and the water from the pumps comes up here, and then you can adjust the pressure at which it operates. There's a spring-loaded piston here with a needle valve at the end, and this line here is controlled by this little thing up here on the dashboard. there's a little tiny knob that lets you adjust the point at which this thing will work. So it's just like an ordinary bypass valve. But if you open it, in this case, the water goes into the boiler, and if you close it, it bypasses it. And when it bypasses, it comes out there and goes through that one and back to the tank. We've got it disconnected at the moment, but we like to watch it work. So that's almost the heart of the control system, because what happens,
Yeah.
the way the boiler's set up, there are all sorts of parameters that determine the way it operates, like the amount of coil in it, and where you've got a thing called the normalizer, which we'll get to in a minute. And so you use that thing basically to set the system so that it's happy at a steady state operation. Because what would happen if we were relying entirely on the pumps, when the car goes faster, it'll pump more water. When it slowed down, it'll pump less water. Sounds all right, but if you're doing 40 miles an hour and you start to go up a hill and the car slows down, you don't want less water, you want more water. So the pumps are arranged so that 2 pumps will supply more than enough water for the car. There are only 2 for redundancy, I think. So 2 will supply more than enough water for the car. So what you do is you set this so that the temperature you starve the boiler a bit, and the temperature starts to rise. And when the temperature gets to the set point, the control box on the other side cuts in and says, I want more water. So it brings 2 more pumps in. So you've now got, when you're over 750 degrees, you've got 4 pumps coming in. But there's 400 feet of tube, so it's going to take a while before the cavalry gets to the scene of the crime later. So what Mr. Doble did, he used a thing called a normalizer, and he squirts from this little solenoid valve here. At the same time that the second set of pumps comes on, that little valve operates and sends feed water to about 60 feet before the thermostat, the superheater. So that cools the superheater down and tends to shut the, reduce the temperature of the output steam, closes the, or opens the contacts and cuts off the extra pumps. So what happens is the temperature comes up to the set point, in comes the extra pumps and the normalizer, so it starts to go down again. They go off, starts to go up again. So you've got a cycle on and off of the extra pumps and the normalizer, and the control is almost to within the width of the needle on the temperature gauge, and that's the temperature gauge there. So we've seen the compensator, which means that no matter what happens, what speed the car's doing, the boiler's getting roughly the same amount of water. So you can always open the throttle at any point and it's got enough water to give you more steam. That's a slight difference between Stanley. When I started to drive this thing and you came to a hill, you tend to shut the throttle with Stanley, whereas this thing just goes up the hill, which is rather good. Here, incidentally, that's the blow off for this, which is supposed to take the shit out, although most of the shit seems to be going into the safety valve thing here. And here's the lovely rod system that works the whistle. There's the line for the whistle. It looks like it's always lived there. Oh, here's the turbine. You're up to the turbine, run by exhaust steam. It comes back through the turbine, then it goes through the top of the condenser, goes down through the condenser, back to the vacuum pumps that are on the bottom of the auxiliary unit, and then the condensate's pumped back up into the tank. In most cases it's not condensing enough, and so a valve opens here and sends the excess steam back to bubble through the tank and go out the back. But you can see these nice big rods that Phil put on to give the turbine something to sit on. Otherwise it was just relying on that connection to the condenser.
Just that? If those weren't there, it would be just that, would it?
So yeah, if it didn't have these, it'd just be sitting down there on its base and just be relying on just tied to the condenser. And the condenser, see this beautiful big rod here?
Yeah.
Well, it had a miserable little thing that didn't have much of a support there, so that if you ever had to stop suddenly, a lot of this might just decide to go forward. Yeah. So all these little things you discover. Right, so we've seen all this side. So here's the control box. I'm just taking the cover off. Mr. Doble would have had castellated nuts and an aircraft style wire through there and a seal to make sure nobody did this. Right, all that tends to look complicated, but it's really quite basic. The quartz rod that's in the middle of this mild steel tube that goes through the middle of the superheater, the quartz rod acts on one side of this yoke, and that yoke's pivoted about here, rotates, and as the temperature increases, that yoke tends to want to go in, so it rotates that way. So when it gets to the set point, which has been set by these little things, it closes that normally open. Look at the gap on it. Anyway, when it gets to 750 degrees, that closes, and that says, I want 2 more pumps, thank you very much. And so the 2 extra pumps come on, and then this normaliser bit here gets feed water squirted in from there, and that's the bottom of the water wall. So the steam's coming up from the pancake coils here, goes through there, but Milton made that, goes down there, goes through the water wall, and then goes through the superheater and then comes out where we saw it on the other side. Now these other ones, there's just a pressure stat there, a diaphragm that's set. This thing here is set at 750 psi. Oops, am I staying on something? There we are. So this is set at 750 psi, so if the pressure's lower than 750, that's closed. On Brian Rankin's car, all the blower motor current goes through that, but to protect the silver contacts, we've got a relay in there, so only the relay current goes through. So that's a special little thing for hysteresis that stops it chattering, so it doesn't just go on and off and on and off too quickly. So that's the pressure, and these are the 2 overrides. So as that yoke rotates, the first thing it does is it gives you 2 extra pumps and extra water up here, and then the next thing, one of these opens and says, sorry, you've gone too far, and so it turns the fire off and says, bad luck, wait until you've got more water. You've got an override for that. You can push a button in there and it'll let you keep the fire on, but only for about another 50 degrees, and then this one opens and says you've had enough now, so just stop. So that's a double cut off. First cut off, second cut off, pressure on and 2 pumps on, so it's really pretty basic really. Here's the front part of the auxiliary unit, and here is just an oil checker. Take that out, read your oil level for your, that's basically just oiling the auxiliary unit, and also it's the oil for the engine, and all that should go there. That's the filler for the engine, for the steam cylinder oil. That's a pump, just like Stanley had, that gives you a little go beforehand. This here is the fuel solenoid that won't let you, won't put the fuel in until you say you can have it. But normally you've got that open and the control system just turns it on and off as it wants it. But it's very nice when you turn it off to turn the fuel off first and then let the blower purge everything out of the combustion chamber. Alright, so and here's the various wires coming back and going to the little control box there, and then they get that junction box from which they wander off their merry way all through the system.
Is setting up all the different levels at which these are meant to come in and out difficult thing to do, or is it?
Oh well, Milton did all that. And we found that they seem to be quite okay.
Doesn't drift around.
No.
Oh, thank goodness. I was gonna
No,
say.
that's great. You don't touch that.
Yeah.
But also, I was watching it very carefully when we turned it on the first time, just to make sure that things were behaving at the spot where they were supposed to. So now we'll put it all back together and turn it on. Now, let's assume the boiler's got no water in it, which I think is wrong. So we've got to turn the ignition on, and the pump's got 80 pounds on it. And if we do this, see now he is going to pump water in. So the way you can tell that's working, the speedo goes to 5 miles an hour. So we're pumping water in, and we put this, that's the handbrake, but it also opens a thing called the Wilson valve, which is basically the drain valve, the back of the engine here. So now we'll test here's the testing system for the coils. Now we'll just see if it'll come on. Did it come on? It did there. The left-hand one was a bit funny. Oh, it did come on. All right, well now, the fire's on. Pressure on the pump's dropped right down. Naughty pump. A lot of water in the boiler because it's going up very fast. You can see the pressure gauge here.
A lot of water coming out of your whistle, right?
Yeah, oh yes. It's a full boiler. Of course, all the fuel. If you direct your attention to the back wheel, you'll see something. The pressure was up and the fire was off. It's come back on all by itself. Now it's off again. See, the fuel pressure drops. The steam pressure is 750, but the temperature now the temperature is only 450, so it's got to get up to about 6 up at the moment, and the fire's off. But watch the green light. When the green light comes on, the fire will come on. There we are, fire's on. But the fire won't come on until the air pressure is enough. We've got an air sensor in there, and there's a special switch that won't let the fire on, won't let the fuel on until the air pressure in there is enough to burn it. Otherwise you get soot. See the generator working here. We're doing nearly 20 miles an hour on blocks. All the stuff works. The temperature's slowly creeping up. We're not really using much steam. In fact, we can hook it up a bit. It doesn't care whether it's running forward or back, of course. Here we are running backwards now, but the speedo doesn't do that. Then we go forward. Stephenson's link motion, pretty basic stuff. 35 miles an hour. Don't know how that happened. But it'll take probably another couple of minutes before it gets up to 700.
They're very short cycles of the burner, aren't they? It doesn't stay on for a long time. It's just a 10 seconds.
Well, this should be on 8 all the time. There's something not quite right with the pump. Sitting right up on us here. And the floor pumps are coming on together now. When the switch is in this position, it's standard Doble, which is 2 pumps then 4. And the 2 pumps will keep coming on until the temperatures drop.
I'll give it a bit more water here.
wouldn't be going through much water in this condition.
No, in fact, this is hardly changed here. Now, it's after spending so much time trying to get the temperature up, it's staying up. I want to see it drop down a little bit now. Oh, here you go. It's done it. The temperature's dropped, so we've got the fire on here. Oh, look, it just came on.
At the end.
But it didn't come on initially.
No, just it.
It's just a touch over 700 degrees. Now this might come on. Oh look, it's trying to come on. But I opened up the compensator a bit to give it more water, so unless we were going, taking more power out of it, I think it's going to stay off now. Anyway, we caught it in the act.